I can't believe you're not going to talk about my birthday on the show.
Eli, for the last time, our show comes out on a delay. If we talk about your birthday on the episode, people won't hear about it till 3 weeks from now, at least.
So do this one first.
We can't just move them around. We can't just move the order of the episodes around.
This is so unfair. We did a whole birthday episode last December.
Do you mean Christmas?
Oh, so Jesus gets a birthday episode, but I don't? What kind of atheist are you, Cecil?
Heath, hold still.
No, I will not be holding still.
Do we have rope? Do we have any rope?
Hey, guys.
Hey, Eli, what's the matter?
No, it's nothing. You guys are doing pre-show shenanigans. Don't let me ruin it.
Come on, buddy. What's wrong?
It's just, I don't know. I thought you guys would do something special for my birthday, and Cecil says we can't even mention it, so it's fine. We're sacrificing Heath because of the Aztecs.
Yeah, man. Do you want to stab him?
Sure. I mean, I guess.
Surprise!
A cupcake in Heath's chest cavity. You guys did remember.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Yeah, man. Happy birthday.
How are you still alive?
Yeah, turns out I was using surprisingly few of my organs.
That tracks.
Welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts, because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Noah, and I'm going to be leading this reconnaissance in force, but to do that, I'm going to need a force. First up, 2 men who got demoted from the cavalry when they refused to move anyway, but up to and over one, Heath and Cecil.
Okay, the anal beads told me that's how to move, Noah.
Chess feels like the ultimate anal gateway game. Almost all the pieces are butt plug shaped, man.
Right?
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
Everything is butt plug shaped.
No, I'm saying almost all of them. Like 2 of them aren't, but if you're a pro, they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just gotta want it, man.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
JV versus varsity.
And also joining us tonight, 2 men that Montezuma has taken more than enough revenge on, Eli and Tom.
Yeah, at this point, I freak out when I have a solid shit. I'm like, whoa, it's like a whole...
You know, honestly, I don't even mind. Like, at least I can hide from the kids while I turn myself inside out.
Oh, there you go.
That's true.
There you go. Now, before we get started tonight, I want to remind everybody that it's sometimes harder than you would think to finance a comedy show that occasionally uses genocide for a topic. And that's why we need our patrons. If you'd like to join their ranks, be sure to stick around to the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Eli, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, event, or genocide will we be talking about today?
Oh, shit.
We'll be talking about the destruction of Techno-Villain and the fall of the Aztec Empire. Look, I don't want to go all Heath and everything, but the person you should not have nominated to tell us what we were talking about today is me.
Fair. All right, so Cecil, you chose this topic, so this episode's mostly your fault. Are you ready to take the blame?
I'm ready to take my lumps with an obsidian paddle.
Oh, that'll make sense later.
Much. Yeah.
So
finally, that willingness comes in handy.
All right, so I guess the best place to start here is with Tenochtitlan itself. So what can you tell us about the city?
So the city of Tenochtitlan was, at its height, the largest city in pre-conquistador Americas. It housed over 140,000 Aztecs. Now, the term Aztec is a debated scholarly term, but for us, we'll be using it to talk about the people that inhabited the city of Tenochtitlan. While the date of the city's founding is not known, the people who live there now decided it was 1325, so it'll be 700 years old in 3 years' time.
Yeah, I hope that's not how it works, though, Cecil, because the U.S. Republican Party has decided it's 1954, and they seem really resistant to changing that view.
That's true.
Well, but the good news is if they keep going in that direction, eventually they'll get back to 1865, which is the last time they didn't suck.
Tenochtitlan is actually still around today. It's located in the heart of Mexico City. It was an island city during the Aztec Empire. It was connected to the mainland with drawbridges. The traffic in the city used canoes on a network of canals. The food was grown on large floating gardens. They had a complex aqueduct system that brought fresh water to the city because the water in the lake basin was brackish. Why build a city on an island surrounded by brackish water?
I was going to ask.
Great question.
Yeah.
These people were going to ask that. I knew it. So I wrote the question. The answer here is prophecy.
Is it magic? Oh, it's okay.
It's prophecy. Yeah. See, the Aztec people had a legend. The ancient prophecy that their wandering tribe would, quote, find the destined site for a great city whose location would be signaled by an eagle with a snake in its beak perched atop a cactus, end quote. That image of the eagle, snake, and cactus is actually what's on the Mexican flag today.
There's the only 3 things in the desert, Cecil. Yeah. How unlikely is that to happen? There's nothing else there.
They wandered. I don't know how long they wandered either. I don't think it was like a Moses level of wandering, but I think they wandered for a while.
Were they coming across these things stacked in the wrong order before? Oh, no, it's a cactus on top of a snake.
When they come across this confluence of weird things happening simultaneously, it was happening on an island in the middle of the lake, and that was the site of their future capital.
Okay, if that's the prophecy, I feel like you find a good spot for the city and then just wait there until the eagle snake this thing happens because they're all dead. That's the only thing in the desert.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like Aztec me pouring sweat, trying to keep up with this wandering tribe. I'm taping together birds and snakes. Guys, look, it's right here.
Or conversely, it's just like, okay, everyone, we're now traveling through the shit swamps of poison mushroom mania. So if anyone sees an eagle at all, just kill it. Just fucking kill the eagle. No looking at cactuses today, guys.
Now, we could do a whole essay or several on the Aztec people, but I'll leave all the nitty gritty for another day. In order to understand some of the things that occur in this story, we do need to know a little bit about their culture. The first thing that we need to understand is the ritual use of human sacrifice. Their religion simply required humans to be sacrificed for all kinds of reasons. For instance, they would sacrifice people to ensure that the sun would rise the next day or to help increase the size of their harvest that year.
Oh, the harvest, maybe I can kind of see, but didn't they ever feel stupid the first time they forgot to murder someone and the son was like, yeah, that wasn't really my thing. I don't need that.
I'm sorry, wait. Unless they're composting them, I don't see why you're carving out an exception for harvest. I don't know why that one makes sense.
I like a yearly
to
thing, Noah. I feel like it loses its punch when it's every day, you know?
All right, no, that's fair.
Agreed.
They would sacrifice people that they took captive in battle, which meant that the way they fought was influenced by this objective. The number of people sacrificed is debated, but one source says 80,000 prisoners were sacrificed in 4 days when they consecrated the Great Pyramid in that city. It's a lot of people. Quote, other estimates place the number of human sacrifices at between 1,000 and 20,000 annually, end quote. The most common form of sacrifice was heart removal. After the heart was dug out of the body, and this ritual, of course, was started when the person was still alive, they would throw the body down the temple stairs where Indian Short Round looked on in horror.
Cecil, seriously, this story is heart-wrenching.
Literally.
Okay, let me be the first to say it, Cecil. I don't know where you're getting your racist information, but TikTok told me long ago that Native Americans lived in perfect peace and harmony before colonizers came along, and they only amused themselves through natural medicine that worked and gay pride parades. So, yeah, just throwing that out there as an alternate perspective.
Absolutely. We got to mention it for sure.
Yeah.
Or we'll just get it like someone's going to tweet at us for like 6 straight days.
Yeah, luckily we won't get any tweets now.
The Aztec also had a warrior class called the Ocelot. These warriors wore jaguar costumes, which they sort of served as their armor. They wore them so that the spirit of the jaguar would give them strength in their battles. The armor was mostly thick padding with some animal hide portions on it.
Okay, you know the new guy was getting stuck with like fucking squirrel when they were short on the jaguar. I was like, all right.
one
What's
guy's
a
like, guys, are you
squirrel
sure we
noise?
don't want to be the rhino warriors? Or hey, how about we're the tree warriors? Because they're just big cats, guys. Honestly.
And their football team sucks. I so hope that ages poorly.
The helmet was wooden, and so was their shield. Their main weapon was a giant paddle-looking thing called a maquaqueedle. It looks like a cricket bat with teeth. The paddle part's made of wood, and the teeth that adorn the outside of it are actually obsidian, which is a ridiculously sharp volcanic rock. Obsidian-edged weapons can be many times sharper than even the best steel scalpels. The cross-section of a blade is 30 angstroms, and an angstrom is 100 millionth of a centimeter.
Jesus Christ.
These super sharp chunks of rock were brittle, though. They could do tremendous damage to someone who was lightly armored or not armored at all.
All right. Basically invented plank of wood with a nail in it. Pretty good on the arms race for a while, I guess.
It's fine.
Call it.
The Aztecs were also many different groups of people that were basically conquered and brought into the empire. What started out as a small group of people when the capital of Tenochtitlan was founded turned out to be a thriving empire 200 years later. By all accounts, the Aztecs were pretty brutal, of course, sacrificing their enemies, but also ruling through power and intimidation, which can get you some enemies.
Right. Yeah. There's like, Jesus, could you guys just use normally sharp rocks? You got to go fucking angstrom with your shit. Jesus.
Use a nail. You guys are crazy. That's ridiculous.
Now, there are two sides in every conflict, and the person responsible for the destruction of Tenochtitlan is someone we will be at least passingly familiar with, the conquistador Hernán Cortés. Cortés was born in Medellin, Spain in 1485 in a family of low nobility. He looks like, well, let me just read you his physical description from the account of the conquest of the Aztec Empire. Quote, he was of good stature and body, well proportioned and stocky. The color of his face was somewhat gray, not very cheerful, and a longer face would have suited him more. His eyes seems at times loving and at times grave and serious.
Is this person negging him?
His beard was black and sparse, as was his hair, which at the time he sported in the same way as his beard. He had a high chest and a well-shaped back and was lean with a little belly. End quote.
It's pretty much exactly my dad when he was on chemo. That's right. Yeah, strangely accurate.
Yeah, dude, that's the most. I'm trying not to insult the guy, but I'm also trying to be honest description I've ever fucking heard.
Right, I feel like he was flirting, whoever wrote that. I feel like it was like weird backhanded flirting.
Cortés heads to the New World and participates in lots of plunder. Now, there's a complicated history between Cortés and his boss, Diego Velázquez, the first governor of Cuba. After first hitting it off and conquering Cuba together, their relationship deteriorated. In 1519, Velázquez gave Cortés command of an expedition to conquer the mainland of Mexico. He gathered 11 ships and about 500 men, 13 horses, several cannon. And at the last minute, Velázquez revokes Cortés's charter. But Cortés just does it anyway in an act of open mutiny.
Yeah, because you know what genocidal colonizers need? Office drama.
All right, but what the fuck else was he going to do with 11 ships, 500 men, 13 horses, and a bunch of cannons? Like open a fucking Panera? What? That's, what?
Now let's talk about what Cortés is packing when he lands on the Yucatan Peninsula in February of 1519. He has, of course, soldiers with metal armor. The soldiers at the time for the Spanish had metal helmets with wide brims on them. They had metal breastplates, which covered their entire chest and stomach. Some had chainmail vests instead of breastplates. Now, there were not people just walking around the jungle in full plate, but the people on horseback were more heavily armored than the foot soldiers, with pauldrons and leg armor, as well as bracers and gloves.
And Cecil, can you remind me which is stronger? Is it metal or leopards? Okay. I'm trying to. Which do we make the buildings out of these days? Is it leopards?
Okay, so I'm betraying my ignorance here, but I feel like if anybody needs more armor, it's not The dude's 5 feet up on a 1,200-pound biological motorcycle, no?
Along with steel armor, they also had steel weapons. While the armor the natives wore worked well against the Aztec death paddles, it was not as effective against steel swords. The steel weapons, while not as sharp, were harder, not as brittle, and were heavy enough to cut through leather, cloth, along with the wooden armor and the shields. Spanish also brought with them crossbows, which could penetrate this kind of armor from hundreds of yards away.
Well, boys, looks like we're going to be fighting some kind of, I don't know, werecat people. So whatever you do, don't throw them. They'll just land on their feet.
Aztec warriors lying there with an arrow in his stomach. Whatever. How many angstroms is this arrow anyways? Probably way more than 30, idiot. Way more.
One conquistador that took like a koosh ball on the end of his sword, and all the cat people are swatting at it as it goes by. They can't stop themselves.
Laser pointer. What are we gonna do now?
They're worried about an ambush, so they start shaking a bag of food.
All the cat people start shaking their butts. It's crazy. I mentioned the horses already, and this is a huge deal, as there were no riding animals or cavalry in the Americas pre-Europeans.
Only if you discount a little historical document called the Book of Mormon, Cecil.
Did they say they had horses?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
multiple
okay.
times.
All right, that's fair. All right.
And swords.
And
swords.
swords. Yeah, okay, all right.
Submarines, tight as a dish, Cecil.
Keurig coffee machines. There's a lot of shit in this stuff.
We also talked about how important cavalry are in battles throughout history, so we can't overstate how important they were to people who had no equivalent force. The Spanish also brought war dogs with them. Now, the Spanish don't mention these much at all in the source material, but the Aztecs at the time do mention them because they were like, what the fuck? These were big dogs covered in spiked armor that would just latch onto the natives and tear out their throats.
That's awesome. I mean, the spiked armor, you got to admit, that makes it seem extra fun, right? Like I'm picturing pugs with a Spanish accent just throwing themselves at people like a torpedo. That's awesome.
Spanish also brought primitive firearms and cannons. While these guns were a bitch to load, weren't rifled, so they shot for shit, were super heavy and unwieldy, they were also fucking loud. So again, these weren't so much weapons that devastated the battlefield with their destruction and death toll per se. They were scary for people who hadn't seen them before. And a cannon may only kill 1 or 2 people, but it going off could scare the opposing side enough into a rout.
Holy shit. That big ball of metal wasn't sharp at all. Guys, we've been thinking about this all wrong. We need to I'm talking straight up drawing board right now.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, I always get emotional when Jaguars are about to get routed, so I'm going to need a minute to compose myself. And while I do that, we're going to toss it over to a little apropos of nothing.
But if you just order a tortilla with beans and cheese on the app, bam, 50 cents. It's like 50 cents.
Right, yeah. That's not a hack, though. That's just using a mistake in the app to steal
It's not
from
stealing.
Chipotle.
It's a hack. It's a hack.
It's
hacking.
not a hack. It's not a hack. That's not a hack.
Holy shit.
Makala wala wala.
Sorry, what?
How's this? Is this better?
Yeah, totally. Oh my God. Who are you?
Oh, I'm actually just here to take all your stuff.
What? No, don't.
Yeah, no, I figured you would say that.
Dude, you just shot my friend with your finger?
Yeah, finger gun. Everyone's got one in the future. Achoo.
Okay, well, that's not fair. Just because you have fancy future weapons, you can't come and like take all of our stuff.
Oh, I absolutely can, and I'm gonna. But hey, if it makes you feel any better, you're going to die of COVID-27, which I gave you as soon as this conversation started.
That does not make me feel better. I mean, it's... Wow. Will your children at least be ashamed of your behavior?
Not really, no. But in like 700 years, we'll make a law that they're not allowed to read about it in case they would get ashamed. And we're back. When we last left off, a bunch of conquistadors were out to conquist. So How'd that go for him, Cecil?
Well, when Cortez lands on the mainland, he actually runs into a Spaniard Franciscan priest named Geronimo de Aguilar. Aguilar was shipwrecked, captured by the Mayans, and then escaped, but he knew a little of the local language, well enough to be Cortez's translator. He heads to Tabasco, and he starts his little conquering tour.
Nobody's going to say caliente.
I almost said it, but it was just a hair.
Come on, guys.
No, nobody's going to address that Tabasco's a place.
I even put a beat in. I was like, let me just do it. I'll just do the line again. He heads to Tabasco.
Caliente.
Thank you, Keith.
That's a sauce.
And he starts his little conquering tour. When he beats the natives there, they give him 20 young women and he converts them to Christianity. And one of them, La Melinache, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, becomes his mistress, mother to his son, and his Aztec translator through Aguilar, meaning he has to talk to Aguilar, then Aguilar has to talk to La Melinache, and finally she talks to the Aztecs.
Hey, Aguilar, please tell my wife to tell the Aztecs that we have spike dogs and that she has orgasms, please. Weird passive-aggressive translation chain there.
They start making their way inland, and they start fighting with the natives along the way. They fight several battles with the Tlaxcalteca and a few other groups, but eventually make peace with them because these groups were enemies of the Aztecs, and the local groups of natives hated the fucking Aztecs. I'll try to mention them a few times throughout the essay, but really it can't be overstated how much help and how much of the Spanish allied force was indigenous enemies of the Aztecs. They estimate, well, the Spanish had a couple thousand people. The indigenous people had something like 200,000 troops.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, those subjugated locals, they fought like hell. They were all heart on the battlefield.
Well, yeah, and that's good because the other times they fought the Aztecs, their heart wasn't really in it. So
Cortez makes his way to the city of Tenochtitlan. And when he gets there, the king of the Aztecs, another familiar name, Moctezuma, but it's also spelled Montezuma as well, comes outside of the city to meet him. They meet, and Moctezuma gives Cortez a gift of a golden and silver disc calendar, which Wikipedia tells us, quote, Cortez later melted these down for their monetary value, end quote.
Jesus. I mean, that's obviously terrible, but if history tells us anything, it's that the Mayan calendar wasn't exactly accurate. So, you know.
So it's super hard for me not to grind this show to a halt while we spend 20 minutes appreciating the brilliance of the Mayans 3 calendar system. It's really fucking cool.
Now, the Aztecs outnumbered the Spanish by an astronomical amount. The Spanish had like 600 soldiers, 15 horsemen, and maybe 15 cannon. The city, with tens of thousands of warriors, and they could have easily killed them outright, but there were a few things that stayed the hand of the Aztecs. The first is that it was harvest season.
Uh-oh.
I guess in their culture, they didn't wage war during that time.
Yeah, farming really was the heart of their community.
Jesus.
Heart.
The heart. Yep.
Artichokes.
Palm. Hearts of palm. It was also believed that Moctezuma invited them into the city and he showed them hospitality as a way to understand them better and learn their weaknesses.
Okay, this is excellent. Just them riding a tandem bike together through the city, crossing streams while they pee together and laughing about it, standing back to back.
Sorry,
Right?
Keith, when you picture friendship, the second thing that comes to mind is crossing the streams while you pee.
What? We've
Okay.
done that. You and I have done that.
We can, but not. It wasn't the second thing we did together.
It's very friendly. Feeding each other grapes. What's yours?
There's a possibility that the Aztecs also thought Cortez was the living embodiment of one of their gods, but modern historians contest this.
Well, I mean, seeing as how we've already described him as looking like Heath's cancer-ridden father, yeah.
Oh my God.
I'd say that's a safe thing to contest.
Right. He was almost done with the cancer. The chemo worked. It's
Post-cancer-ridden father.
So you're saying never looked better? That was a compliment.
It was positive. He beat that one anyway. Then he died of a different cancer. What's happening?
In any case, they come into the city, and after a few days of hospitality, they basically capture the leader of the Aztecs in his own city and hold him hostage. It sounds like from what I read that Moctezuma actually wanted to broker peace with the Spanish. And it also seems that while he was basically a prisoner in part of the city, Cortez let him just mostly go about his daily life.
Let me tell you about my best friend. They were definitely doing friend stuff and singing. Just riding penny farthing doubles together. Now it's a penny farthing.
This goes on for a couple of weeks, and it really isn't clear what the end game was. But Cortez eventually gets word at the city that the governor that he mutinied against sent several ships full of soldiers to arrest him and take over his command.
Turns to Montezuma. Oh, shit. Okay. So you remember how I told you my dad was a ninja spy and my mom was a supermodel? Well, their car just pulled up and none of that was true. And it should be super duper cool. Okay, dude?
Can't believe I crossed streams with you.
Cortez leaves Moctezuma in the hands of one of his lieutenants and 200 of his men, and he heads out with the rest of his troops to his reserve force that he left by the boats. When he gets to the ships, he overcomes the captain of that mission. There aren't a lot of notes here on that, but it doesn't sound like his force fought all out with the landing party, and instead he basically persuaded the reinforcement troops to join him. But then Cortez scuttles the ships so there can be no retreat, and they march on Tenochtitlan.
That still seems very short-sighted. Good news, boys. We've defeated the enemy, so we can plunder their lands. Any of you guys know how to build an entire ship, though, from scratch? Our materials are melted golden calendars, cactuses, and very sharp rocks.
Look, we're not leaving the recital early, and to make sure, I have set the car on fire.
So weird.
Back at the city, his lieutenant is invited to a ritual. Now, the accounts of this differ, but the Spanish account is that they were led into the arena for a ritual, and they realized that the Aztecs were about to sacrifice several people, so they attacked the assembled crowd, killing a bunch of the Aztec aristocracy. Aztecs say that the Spanish came in, saw all the gold they were wearing, and were driven mad by greed, and killed the assembled Aztecs and stole their shit.
Sounds right.
It sounds like they basically retreated to a part of the city afterward, with Moctezuma still under their control.
Okay, either way, the reason for doing a small massacre during a human sacrifice during an attempted genocide it's just a weird argument. I don't think anybody wins.
Also, the plot of most Liam Neeson movies these days. I don't know if you guys have been watching.
When Cortez returned, he came into the city, and I guess all hell broke loose. There's an outright rebellion, and the Spanish decide to see if they can get the Aztec leader, Moctezuma, to get the crowd to settle the fuck down. Moctezuma goes out to talk to the masses. And according to the Spanish, the crowd stoned him to death.
Jesus.
According to the Aztecs, the Spanish killed him because he couldn't calm the crowd. Either way, homeboy's dead. They basically have no more bargaining chip, and they have to flee the city. Now, many of the Spanish have to swim to safety, but the load of gold that they found is too tempting, and they decide to swim to safety with it. They drowned. They drowned.
There it is. Yeah,
Cortez claimed that 150 of his troops died either drowning or getting carved up as the rear guard during the retreat.
Okay, I get they want to take the gold, but was it mostly like anklets that they locked onto themselves? Just drop the gold once that's not working.
All right, fine then. I guess I'll have to reconsider our kettlebell swim meet. History really does help us understand our world.
The Aztec troops, vastly outnumbering the Spanish and their allies, chased them, hoping to eradicate the army from the land completely. They caught up to the Spanish and their allies at Otumba, which is a large plain outside the city, and the two forces fought. Now, this is where the things I mentioned earlier come into play. First, the Aztecs have no fucking idea what to do against a cavalry charge, and they're getting eaten up by the horses. Then they also just didn't have weapons that they could really do much damage with to the Spanish. Their obsidian clubs, while sharp, would be completely useless after one hit against the steel because they would shatter. The battle eventually takes a very hard turn when the Aztecs' main commander was lanced on the battlefield. While it wasn't a rout after that, the Aztec morale was shaken and they eventually lost.
Yeah, also, their go-to problem-solving strategy of human sacrifice wasn't really making things easier for them.
Okay, sir, I pushed Steve in front of an oncoming horse in a panic. Does that count as human sacrifice or losing? Asking for the sun.
How are the crops doing?
Now, there is one more weapon that the Spanish brought with them, a devious biological weapon called smallpox. See, the Native Americans didn't have livestock to share diseases with and supercharge germs so they could get sick, but also develop some immunity. Smallpox devastated the area, killing a huge percentage of the empire. It also devastated Spanish, but just not as bad.
Yes, but at least they didn't live in fear, Cecil. They went to Ruby Tuesdays whenever they wanted, not wearing a mask, damn it.
Cortez returned to Tenochtitlan, having lost part but not all of his forces. He worked his way around the city, capturing any small towns in the area until he basically owned all the territory around the island. Once he controlled that, he cut off the aqueducts that led to the city and he started the siege. On the lake, he had his men construct multi-sail boats called brigantines. They stopped anyone from getting supplies into the city and also prevented anyone from escaping. The Aztecs would sometimes get in canoes and try to fight these ships. One battle was 13 sloops versus 1,000 canoes. The canoes lost.
Okay, boss, I get our cricket bats with broken glass are kind of like oars in shape. That's nothing. They have really big boats. They're just going to slowly bump into us like they have Starman, and we're going to lose like 13 against 1,000.
Men, this is our last stand against the Spanish. Except, obviously, don't stand in the canoes or you'll tip over.
The siege lasted 75 days, and it was basically block by block fighting between the two forces. The Aztecs would fight and capture the Spanish if they could, and then they would take the prisoners up to the temple, tear out their hearts in ritual sacrifice, and throw their bodies down the stairs. The Spanish and their allies eventually routed the Aztec forces and burned much of the city to the ground. The amount of murdering the Spanish did here is referred to as a genocide. The canals in the city had something like 40,000 bodies in them. They killed between 100,000 and 240,000 people. The new Aztec leader tried to flee, but was captured, and they tortured him looking for more gold. They took all the plundered art and they melted it down. The capital was in ruins. The aristocracy of the Aztec Empire was almost all dead. The rest of the Aztec warriors fled, and the indigenous allies and the Spanish continued their killing across the countryside. It took 3 years, but with his allies, Cortez destroyed not only the city of Tenochtitlan, but the entire Aztec Empire. Cortez would spend all his money on future expeditions and eventually die shitting himself silly with dysentery. So Moctezuma got his revenge.
There it is. Nice.
All right, so if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Guns, germs, steel, and 200,000 indigenous allies is not as good a book title.
No, that's fair.
It's just not as good.
And are you ready for the quiz?
Let's do it.
All right, Cecil. The colonialist oppressors were so obsessed with gold they were willing to let it destroy them. Who do they sound like? A. Preppers. B. Libertarians. C. Sovereign citizens. D. Trick question. A, B, and C are all the same answer.
Okay, was it monoatomic gold? I feel like that's the question, right?
It's definitely the D, Tom.
It is
It's
always the D.
All right, Cecil, I got one for you. Which of the following is a true thing about Aztec history? A. The English words for tomato, chili, avocado, tamale, taco, and chocolate all have roots in Nahuatl, the Aztec language. B. The Aztecs were one of the first societies to have mandatory public education for kids. C. Aztec women were able to own property, which puts them about 500 years ahead of America. Or D. This is my favorite one. The Aztecs played an amazing sport called Olamalitzli, which is their version of a family of sports called the Mesoamerican ball game that dates back to 1650 BCE. The Aztec version was a common. It's obviously this one. I'm going to tell you about this sport.
It's fine.
Also, maybe the other ones. The Aztec version was a combination of racquetball, volleyball, basketball, hip checking like in hockey, and beer pong. It was played inside a large netless volleyball court with side walls, and each team has to hit a rubber ball back to the other side before it bounces 3 times. And people died playing this sport. The ball was solid rubber, and weighed up to 9 pounds.
Oh my God.
And in the traditional version of the sport, you can only hit the ball with your hips or, your like ass and crotch areas, like general hip area.
A
Yeah.
9-pound rubber ball with your junk?
9-pound rubber ball. Yeah.
Yikes.
And some of the Aztec courts, they added one extra feature. They put stone hoops along the sidewalls at the midline, like where the top of the poles that hold a volleyball net would go. But on like a basketball hoop, it was vertical with an opening facing each team. And if anyone was able to, crotch bump the 9-pound solid rubber ball through that hoop and into the other team's area, that would win the match immediately, regardless of the score. So you're kind of like a death cup in beer pong. That's what a beer pong part
Jesus.
was.
I know you're trying to lure me in with D, but I actually think it's B. The Aztecs were the first of the societies to have mandatory public education for kids, but you forgot one piece. They couldn't talk about their future genocide when they did it. They weren't allowed to do that.
Yeah, critically. No, it was actually E, all of the above, but B was correct.
Okay.
And your correction
That's
was
fair.
correct, I'm sure.
Cortez will go down in history as a genocidal villain, but he wasn't that good a commander. Why? A, he only won on an technicality.
That's good. I like it.
B, this whole thing could have worked itself out in a Montezuma meeting.
I'll allow it.
Or C, his soldiers lack heart.
Oh, Eli. I'm going to say, what is that? D, all of the above, because they were also very
That
good.
is wrong.
It's obviously A. It looks like we've got ourselves a winner in Eli because, come on, as technicality is pretty fucking good.
Pretty
so
good. It's
Eli,
pretty
good.
who's going to do next week's essay?
I want a meditation on the drug war. Tom,
it.
you're the man to provide it.
All right. Well, for Cecil, Eli, Heath, and Tom, I'm Noah. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We're going to be back next week. And by then, Tom will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, leave us the fuck alone. We give you enough. We have lives. Shit. All right. And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod or leave us a 5-star review anywhere you can. And if you want to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes, be sure to check out citationpod.com.
And that, children, is when the future invasion of America began. Many would die, but the Futurians would soon rule over all of America.
My robo-daddy says the Futurians and the ancient Americans were friends.
Is your robo-daddy a Republibot?
Yes?
Yeah, figured.